Okay, I am Trudy Popo, philanthropist, someone who basically is the voice for the voiceless in terms of abuse and mental illness. I am the founder of two foundations which have combined now. The two were We Evolve and Aiding Nusetlisi. We Evolve basically took care of abuse and mental illness, and Aiding Nusetlisi basically catered for persons who were underprivileged in society. So I've turned it and branded it into Lulu's Love of Giving in memory of my mom, who was instrumental in me opening both foundations. And I'm also a director for Rise Inclusion.
All right, lovely. That sounds like a lot of work. Huh?
It is a lot of work.
But I suppose it's worth it. What has been your experience when it comes to working with children who have been exposed to sexual abuse or abuse in general?
My experience in working with teenagers and children who have been exposed to sexual abuse, first off, you get them being frightened. Second, you find that they don't find a sense of security in anyone to basically open up. And three, you have them having that rebellious stage. It doesn't matter at what age, and you have our education system not being trained to facilitate that type of rebellious behavior. So they think that the children are just being stubborn, or the children are just being hard-headed, or they're just following bad company or influence of what they saw on a television set.
Or they are the bad company themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how soon do you think children should be taught about sexual abuse? And I think to add to what you just said, how soon or how detailed should teaching people about sexual abuse should be, especially in the case of teachers, school admin, parents?
Okay, so in terms of abuse, first off, I would say that you teach your child about abuse from the onset, from the time they're able to walk, they're able to communicate. So then you're able to identify if somebody touches them in the wrong way, or somebody does them something that they can communicate with you. So you create that bond with your child. In terms of society, I think before we can even speak about abuse, we need to accept the fact of mental illness is real. It's no longer a taboo subject. And in order for us to be able to tap into dealing with sexual abuse, we have to be able to deal with the mental illness aspect. And unless we're ready to deal with that, then basically we're putting a band-aid on something and allowing it to basically decay internally while we're thinking that, okay, it's going to be cured.
Right, and we like to pretend as if everything is okay. This is totally not
that's the society we live in. Yes.
Right, and especially since sexual abuse victims, they're kind of silenced. So we like to play into the convenience of them being silent to pretend.
Actually, as somebody who survived sexual abuse on more than one encounter, I would tell you it's not us wanting to stay silent.
Right.
It's the fact of being criticized and being shamed by society, and saying, okay, what were you wearing? What were you doing? What did you say? How did you feel? And even going into reporting the incident, these are some of the questions they ask you. What was going through your mind? How did you feel? That in itself makes you replay the ordeal and makes you feel very uncomfortable. And even the way that you're treated, even by the police department, it makes you feel like, why did I report it in the first place? So for that reason, you find a lot of victims staying silent.
Right. You already touched on that, but I just wanted to go a bit deeper. What part do you think mental health has to play in abuse? Well, both on the part of the victim and the abuser.
Okay, so if we look at the victim, when a victim is sexually abused, they're scarred for the rest of their life. So if you're not a very strong-willed person, depression will consume you totally. And I'm talking from experience. My last ordeal, I had what we call a depression spiral. I literally zoned out, completely turned off from everyone. Everybody asked, you're fine? And I'm fine. But little do they know that I was attempting suicide. So it's to a point where the victim is put into that space, that dark space. But then you also have the perpetrator who's suffering from some form of mental illness in order for them to inflict that type of pain onto someone. And we tend to think that, okay, if the person is sent to prison, that we deal with the issue. It's not being dealt with. We need to find a solution to actually deal with these problems before they actually surface. Right. So we need to stop ignoring the actual issue rather than just, like I said, putting a band-aid on it.
And taking all of that into consideration, what would you say is the significance of sexual and reproductive health and rights, and also comprehensive sexuality education when it comes to abuse prevention and maybe dealing with it?
Well, first off, in order for us to do the whole comprehensive education, we'd have to create the awareness. In our education system, we'd have to accept it holistically and say, okay, these are the red lights that we need to look for. This is how you deal with it. We need to also be able to put that whole aspect of accepting that there is mental illness, creating the avenues to deal with it at various health institutions and not at one specific location, and ensuring that even some of our students who are feeling that growing bud into them to become a perpetrator, if we can nip it in the bud before it actually happens, then we have actually successfully done it. Because right now, we currently have an ongoing program in terms of sexual abuse and crime prevention going around in schools, partnering with Rice St. Lucia. And so far, it has been hitting in the various schools, but we don't think that it's effective enough as we'd like it to be.
And especially since it's not ongoing, because I could tell you my experience, I think as much as we did, I mean, it was mentioned here and there, but I think after maybe in grade 1 when they said this is good touch, this is bad touch, it wasn't really brought up.
Are we still teaching that in schools?
I'm not sure if we are.
I don't think so.
Oh?
I'll have to find out, but I don't think so. Because even the whole stigma campaign that has stopped as well. So if somebody touched you inappropriately, instead of reporting it to the teacher, they would just retaliate. So you find that person has that to say, oh, that person is a vagabond, that person is raised this way. So that whole stigma of dealing with the entire abuse is very rampant in our society.
So this has been going on a lot in the news, or it's been discussed here and there, safe spaces. We do have situations where, okay, students are, what's the word? Sorry, the word just left me. We do have situations where students are like idle and stuff like that in town, and many people have come out and said the children have to go straight home, blah blah blah. And especially on the road, you never know, they might be susceptible to cases of sexual abuse and stuff like that. So I say all this to ask you now, do you think we have enough safe spaces for survivors, and also do you think we have enough safe spaces to prevent sexual abuse from happening?
To answer both questions, no and no. And to elaborate on the whole fact of idling students and so forth, what I have learned in terms of dealing with abuse, teenagers especially, is that them going to school is their avenue to escape. Because you find somebody at home or somebody in the family is inflicting that sense of pain. So while they're idling, they're basically taking time away from getting hurt again. Mm-hmm. So we need to look at this holistically in order for us to deal with the whole idling aspect, but also we need to understand, trying to understand the students on a whole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this, it had come up many times. I spoke to a few persons when it came to the students idling situation, mm-hmm. and they did say we don't have enough safe spaces.
No, we don't. I think my heart ached when we had the complete shutdown for COVID, because I was like, okay, where is this children going to escape? Basically, mm-hmm. we're shutting these children down in the same environment where they're going to be inflicting pain on them constantly. And then we have that whole mental illness going on with these children. And then what you find is that when they were back into the school environment, they were very introverted. Mm-hmm. So they're lashing out, but they're also keeping to themselves. And then you find the teachers are not able to deal with it because they're not trained to deal with it. And then it's becoming a whole other issue. So you find more fights in school, more students are just not dealing with their schoolwork, etc.
I find it was an interesting thing for you to bring up the quiet forms of rebellion, or even though it's not rebellion, but just withdrawing from everything. Would you be able to speak a bit to that? Because we always talk about the child that's giving attitude because she's being abused. What's about the child who sits at the back of the class saying and doing absolutely nothing and just let them fly by?
I'll give you myself, for example. My first ordeal at the age of 8, basically everybody knows that I became more introverted, became more quiet. But little do people know, while I was being extremely quiet in the classroom and everybody said, Trudy will not hurt a fly, out there, I was getting involved in drug abuse, alcohol abuse. So you find as much as that child is being very, very quiet, something else they're battling. So in my mind, I was trying to think of ways to make everybody around me feel the pain that I'm feeling. So we also need to be very, very careful in terms of saying, okay, that one is a quiet child. We need to also pay attention and watch at just the small little hints that they're giving in terms of what's going on with them mentally.
I believe those are all of my questions. Do you have anything that you would like to say?
I would make an appeal to the victims to continue to be strong. As much as you are silent, there are persons who are constantly ready and willing to give you that avenue for you to let your voices be heard, even if you want to stay in the dark. Speak to someone. Don't turn to suicide. And to the perpetrators out there, try to get the help that you need. And to society and its whole, let's stop judging the victim and let's try to help the victim.